Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Suicidal, Funtime. It is written by Zarikimbo. Are you freaking insane? Mitchell was chuckling at my fearful reaction, chuckled. I did not sign up for this. Let me the hell out. Actually, you kind of did, little buddy. Didn't you read the fine print? In any case, it's too late to back out now. I racked my brains for anything that might have mentioned this in the long section of fine print on the waiver I had signed. If I'd known this was there, I would have done more than skim it. There was something about orbital insertions, but I thought that meant by dropship. It didn't say anything exceed terminal velocity. The Loadmaster's voice came over our headsets and interrupted my reply. We're over the drop zone. Go, go, go. Wait, don't. I couldn't finish the sentence. The extremely unpleasant feeling of rapidly falling meant my stomach was doing flip-flops in my chest, and I reflexively dug my claws into the fabric of my harness. As if jumping out of the shuttle 50 kilometers above the surface of the planet weren't bad enough, I had absolutely no control over our descent. I was completely helpless, strapped to the chest of this maniac of a human, and screaming at the top of my tiny lungs as we fell down the gravity well. I must have blacked out at some point, because 1 minute we were in silent freefall, the next a deafening boom and a sudden jarring motion, and woke me up. What the hell was that? I shouted. Oh, you're back. That was us breaking the sound barrier. What a rush, right? He actually seemed excited. The sound barrier? How fast are we falling? Probably over 1,000 kilometers per hour, but who's counting? I wanted to give him an indignant answer, but I was too afraid to speak. All I could do was hold on for dear life and hope this insane human didn't get us killed. Flying was something I was used to doing on a daily basis. I loved the feel of rushing wind holding my wings aloft. It was so soothing to glide through the air for hours at a time at a sensible pace. This was most definitely not flying. This was falling at suicidally high speeds with no sign of slowing down. You gotta see the view, it's amazing, yelled Mitchell. A second later, my visor activated and I was treated to the admittedly spectacular view of the world below. A world we were rapidly approaching, and we weren't slowing down enough. It was even more unsettling because I could hear the wind howling past us, but I couldn't feel it. Tucked away inside Mitchell's spacesuit and snug against his chest, I could only feel the skin of my suit vibrate slightly and temperature rise alarmingly fast as the atmospheric gas was forced aside without passage. I could hear and feel my own heart thundering loudly behind me. I'm not ashamed to admit I saw it myself at that moment. Any other UI who experienced the same terror and claims otherwise is either a lying sack of crap, feathers, or completely insane. How could you not, when you can feel the beginnings of atmospheric re-entry insertion? I could actually see flames beginning to obscure the video image. I must have blacked out again, and woken up by another jolt as our outer layers of our suit fell away, and the wind dealt us a gut punch. What's happening? I yelled, partially relieved I survived the inferno, but mostly still terrified that we were still falling. We're flying now, he replied, utterly ecstatic. It feels amazing. See for yourself. There was an unpleasant tingling sensation and a brief period of extreme vertigo before I suddenly felt it. We were flying. According to the altimeter and speedometer, we were still over 30 kilometers above the surface of the planet and moving at over 5,000 kilometers per hour. I'd never felt anything like it before. The fastest I'd ever gotten when diving must have been a third of that, and even then I couldn't maintain it for more than a few seconds before I had to pull up if I didn't want my wings snapped off. This stage lasted for an incredibly long time, and I was able to feel the wind on Mitchell's wings as if they were my own. The neural uplink transmitted what the sensors on his wings were picking up directly to my brain. It was overwhelmingly exhilarating to feel like I had a wingspan 10 times larger than my own. I felt so powerful. I realized my own definition of flying and soaring were pathetically lame in comparison to what I was currently experiencing. Nothing is more visceral to an avian species than this. I was so awed that I completely forgot my terror. I felt like a god. We flew through the wispy cloud banks, a refreshing coolness briefly contrasting the pleasant warming of the sun on our wings. The wind was reduced to a faint whistling as we slowed down during our glide. I was so lost in the sensation of true freedom that I didn't really notice it. I don't remember how long we flew like that, but it was over before I knew it. There was another jolt as the longer sections of wings fell away. Our wingspan reduced by half, and our speed doubled. We were now only 3 kilometers above the surface, and still traveling at blisteringly high speeds. My terror returned in full force as Mitchell's angled directly towards the mountains.
"What the hell are you doing? Are you trying to get us killed?"
I yelled at him as the solid walls of rock grew near. "No way, you'll never feel more alive than when you're zipping by certain death at 200 kilometers per hour. Check this out." Mitchell proceeded to aim for a slim gap between 2 mountains and shoot right through it. But he didn't stop there. Oh no. He had to do it repeatedly, with bunches of trees and cliffs the closer we got to the ground. It was like he was trying to squeeze every bit of danger he could out of our mad race to death before we slammed into the ground. I could hear the whoosh of every near miss, even though I knew that we were going slower than we had in the beginning. We were now close enough to the ground for me to truly see exactly how fast we were going. I wanted to close my eyes, but I was too afraid to look away. It soon became apparent that Mitchell had chosen this route specifically for the many opportunities to kill us. He took perverse delight in getting as close to the trees and rock as he possibly could. Time after time, I thought that we were going to die, but we somehow managed to escape by the skin of our beak. At last, we shot out of the suicidal slalom and out into the valley. I was relieved that I would die in a pretty meadow, then the barren crags of a mountain. This relief was almost as short-lived as we were going to be, because an enormous hole opened up behind the hill, and Mitchell dove in. I was probably screaming again, but my mind had shut down the awarenesses of it. At least in the mountains we had open sky above us. Now we were completely surrounded by rock. Strangely, it was more terrifying to see where we were going than if we had been falling in pitch black. Unfortunately, there were lights mounted along the walls to reveal not only how close to death we were, but also how fast it was approaching. Deeper and deeper we fell into the crust of the planet, lights flashing past us at breakneck speed. The howling of wind was magnified in the tight confines of the tunnel, making it feel like we were being swallowed by a leviathan. Suddenly, the lights disappeared as the tunnel opened up into a gigantic cavern, and we were swallowed by the dark. Before I could black out for a third time, there was a powerful jerk backwards, and my breath was driven out of my body. As I struggled to get it back, I began to notice that we had slowed to a merely bone-breaking speed. "That was awesome!" Mitchell crowed. I still hadn't got my breath back, so I couldn't refute that with every bone of my terror-trembling body. There was some rustling as Mitchell fumbled with something on his leg, and a moment later, a bunch of bright flares bloomed beneath us, falling to the ground. It was then that I began to hope that I might actually live, now that I could see where the ground was. I could also feel how slowly, relatively speaking, we were falling. Mitchell seemed sturdy enough to withstand a rough landing. After the insane ordeal I had just experienced, the landing, though violent, was nowhere near as deathly abrupt as I had imagined. In fact, it was downright bland in comparison. I was in shock as Mitchell busied himself with removing the suit, harness, and enormous sheet of fabric that was attached to us by several cables. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out what it was for. Mitchell took me out of the harness and gently placed my limp body on a soft pile of gear while he tended to whatever it was needed doing. "What is that?" I asked dazedly, raising a tired wing to point at the sheet. Mitchell paused in the middle of setting up a tripod lamp to look over. "Well, that's a parachute. It's how we slowed down at the end." With far more calm than I believed possible, I turned unsteadily to face him.
"Do you mean to tell me that you flung us out of a shuttle 50 kilometers above the surface of the planet, somehow survived violent atmospheric re-entry at ludicrous speed, flew over half a continent, risked our lives to play hatchling with mountains, dove down into the belly of the planet, and stopped us from becoming smears in the rock with a piece of cloth?"
He actually looked happy. "Yeah, it was a blast. Let's do it again." I goggled at him.
Are you serious?
He gave me a confused look. Yes! I fainted. End of story. I would just like to thank the T5 supporters. Bushmaster 117, Caspar Arnholtz, Draxoon WRE, Elijah Silvercross, Gray, John Carrington, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.